Hi, I'm Steven, the founder of SixStringers. Today the subject is going to be, this is a nut slot gauge, a digital nut slot gauge, and to adapt it for measuring frets. Now the way this guy is designed, the gauge is off to one side and it's quite short. It has some grooves in here to bridge the fret, but that's so these grooves here can bridge the strings and it's for string action. But it also can be used to measure frets. However, there's a radius on the bottom of this block and it's 16 inches. Okay, that's not necessarily ideal. What if you have a 9.5 inch radius neck? It's going to rock. So what I've done with this is I've filed down these two middle feet by about a 1/16 of an inch so that it won't rock, and so it will work on more fretboards. That's still kind of a problem for measuring frets. When you're measuring frets, you would bridge it over the fret and then kind of slide it across like this, but because this is off to one side, now you have to turn it around, and that means you have to get to the other side to read it. Kind of awkward, and with that 16-inch radius, it has some variances in there that kind of throw off the tolerances a bit. And I like measuring frets for fret forensics, so I know exactly what's going on. This is a forensic worksheet that you can download from the how-to page on SixStringers.com. And what you do is you measure from the low E side to the middle to the high E side, and you write in the numbers as you go. So you're measuring in 3 places, and you go all through all of the frets, and you're going to have a topographical map that when you look at it and you look at the numbers, which I'll show you a little bit later here, you'll know exactly what's going on with your frets. And that way you'll know exactly what needs to be done and how to do it. And again, I'll explain more of that when I do a screen view of the forensic worksheet. So I make this, and I always do it wrong. This is a radius block, and this is the parent block, so parent and child blocks. And there are different child blocks with different radiuses. Now, right now there's 11 radiuses. That isn't to say that if you need something that we don't have in the 11 that I couldn't make it, because I sure would. I would definitely do that for you. And so these slide on, and there's a stop block on it. Now, on the corner here, and I know you can't see it from where you are, but there's raised letters to tell you what the radius is. And but I also go ahead and I mark these on the inside face too. So this is a 9.5. This fretboard here is 12. So I'm going to use the 12 and slide it on. And there's a stop so it won't slide off the other side. You have a set screw here, but the precision of this is very, very tight. You really don't need the set screw. As you can see, it's not going to be falling out, but you can use it if you want to. Now, ideally, depending on the guitar, like this guitar is looking pretty level here in the support, but some, like say a Stratocaster, it's going to be coming up like this, you know, it's because it's a thinner body, and so this guy's top heavy, and you'll want to fall, right? So what you would do with a Strat is you'd take it off of that. Okay, now taking this guitar off of that, we're leaning the other way. So with the support, this is nice and level, or anyway, super close to it. To use this, I'm going to change the view here and get closer up so you can see exactly what's going on. Okay, so there's some buttons on here, on, off, inches, millimeters, and then zeroing it out. Turn it on, set it on the wood, not on the fret. Now, there's plenty of light with the camera view, but normally I use a flashlight. But if I use the flashlight in the camera, it kind of glares it out and you can't read it. But normally I would use a flashlight because these aren't backlit. So, hold it nice and steady and zero it out. Now, this may or may not show a 5. Let me use the light so I can see it. Yeah, there's a little 5 there. That has 5/10,000ths of an inch. I'm not going to worry about 5/10,000ths of an inch. That's like a half a thousandth. Now we put it on the fret. And this number reads 45 thousandths. Now if you bounce the table around, sometimes it'll bounce a number around. So you want to keep things nice and steady. Move it over. And what does that say? 49? Yeah, it sure does. And move it over the other way. Make sure we're nice and stable here. 48. In the middle is 45. So that fret's pretty wonky. And you're going to know exactly what that is. And you use your pen and you write it down on the forensic sheet. And you get on the next fret. So if we're just going to say measure the middles now, that's 45. Get an idea what's going on with the frets. 46, 46, 44, 42. This is a brand new guitar. It's a Firefly guitar. It's less than $300 and it's stainless steel frets. And these frets need to be leveled. And to get them perfectly and to keep the crown and to keep the radius, the tool for the job is the Fret Maestro. And in this case it's a 12-inch radius, so a 12-inch radius Maestro or an Omni Pro. And curious 43 and a half, 43 and a half, 40, 40 or 41, 41, 41 and a half, and if I jump all the way that way, 38 and a half. Now, I don't know about, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to see what we have here. 41. So, you see why you would want to use a digital gauge. You cannot determine this with a fret rocker. And I'm going to change the view and come back. This is a worksheet from a customer for their ES335, Gibson ES335. Customers like to work with me. I like to work with customers. They're working on a new guitar. They do the fret forensic worksheet and send it to me. I look at it. We discuss the best way to approach the guitar. And these numbers tell the story. Without these numbers, you're just, shooting in the wind. Okay, fret forensics is super important if you really want to get your guitar right, to get the very smoothest buttery play and clearest crisp intonation. So let's look here. First thing we're going to do is find a short fret. And so the shortest fret happens to be the 22nd fret. Now this is in the middle of the fret. Here we have the high E, and here the low E, and then this is the middle here. Well, we're not going to concern ourselves if the last fret is the shortest fret, because it's the last fret. So we keep looking, and here in the 3rd fret and the 2nd fret we have 44 thousandths. All these other frets are taller than that except for the 20th. But the 20th fret is so close to the 22nd. So we're really looking, say, from the 18th to the 1st, and the 1st to the 18th. So realistically, our shortest fret is 44 thousandths. What's our tallest fret? Well, the tallest fret looks to be 56.5 thousandths. That's a lot. 56.5 thousandths minus 44 thousandths equals 12.5 thousandths. So think about this, what that means. A medium jumbo fret is like 36 thousandths inch tall. 12.5 thousandths is more than a third of that. You get the idea what 12.5 thousandths is now? Pretty crazy, huh? Okay. So now we're going to look at what a sanding beam does. On a sanding beam, you know, they've got these straight flat sanding beams, and they don't span the entire fretboards. And so the idea is, however, to follow the string line, right, as you sand. Not go straight down the middle. And you have to follow the string line. That's their idea, to try to, you know, not completely destroy the radius of the fret. The radius of the fret being the radius that goes across, that's supposed to match the radius of the fretboard. Not talking about the radius from left to right of the fret. That's called a crown. Okay. So you follow the string line. So if we look at on this guitar, if we look at the high E, we have 49 thousandths here and 54 thousandths there. Now, I'm going to show you another video here about how a sanding beam works, what level is, what coplanar is, la la la. So let's skip over to that and we'll come back. Okay, and we're talking about leveling frets. Now, for those that have seen, and a lot of people have watched this video, this bohonk guy introduces the idea of coplanar frets and saying that level doesn't matter, which is why I call him bohonk. So let me explain that to you so you know what's really going on. Level versus coplanar. The definition of level requires a base horizon. So here we have a base horizon in blue, and a second horizon that is parallel, such that the distance between the two planes is equal across. So we have a 1/4 inch at this end and a 1/4 inch at this end here. So that magenta line is level to the reference line, which is the blue line. Coplanarity has nothing to do with that. Coplanarity simply means that a series of points in space, these little circles here, reside on a common plane, common co. So they are all on this common magenta plane, but notice that this is not parallel to the blue line. Well, the blue line doesn't really exist in coplanarity, you see, because we're only talking about a single plane in space. And it could be at any angle. It could be vertical. It doesn't matter. Coplanarity has nothing to do with level, okay? So when you, if you watch that guy's video, know that he just shoved a whole bunch of muck in your face. Because that's, he just, what is that, some pedantic nonsense. Okay. Typical example of uneven frets. Now, when we're talking about the ES335, the disparity between the frets is actually greater than what I'm using in this graph. Here, we're looking at the 12th fret as being the tallest fret, and that's a 60 thousandths. Okay, right here. And it has to find another fret to rest on so that it does not rock. Like, for example, it can't just rest on the 12th and the 11th. Let's say the 11th was also 60 thousandths. That's not enough distance for the beam to span to stabilize. So it's going to seesaw. No, it has to be wide enough apart for the beam to stabilize right? So here, fret number 5, we have a 54 thousandths fret. All right, and the difference between 60 thousandths and 54 thousandths, of course, is 6 thousandths. And so we're going to follow this angle of the beam, and that angle is, this is a CAD program, this is very exact, 180.054095 degrees. And you're thinking, gee, that's nothing. Yeah, okay. Well, but at that angle, that means the bottom of the beam is 65 thousandths here, 60 thousandths here, 54 thousandths here, and 49 thousandths here. So yeah, that little bit of angle makes a huge difference on frets. So what's going to happen? Everybody makes videos and they say, oh, just mark the frets, the top with a Sharpie, and then use the beam all up and down the frets and the fretboard, and gee, you know, miraculously they're going to be level when all the Sharpie mark is gone. There are lots of videos that show that. So many people are showing you that, and they are all throwing mud in your face. Okay? It's nonsense. And here's why. So, we're going to go and sand this guy down till all the Sharpie marks are gone. So we're going to lower this line until it's on the top of the 22nd fret, because that's actually the furthest distance it has to come down. So that'll make this fret at 56 thousandths. It'll make the 12th fret at 50 thousandths, so we basically are taking 10 thousandths off of that. It will make the 5th fret 44 thousandths, another 10 thousandths there, and the 1st fret is going to be 40 thousandths. So from the 1st fret at 40 thousandths to the 22nd fret at 56 thousandths, well, simple math, that is a 16 thousandths error. Okay, that's absolutely positively ridiculous. Okay, it's just, no. But that's what's going to happen, folks. Oh, they'll be coplanar, by the way. Yes, they'll all follow this straight line that's at an angle. So the tops of the frets, if those are points in space, would all be on that plane. That's a coplanar, but it's not level. And guitars are not made to have the frets to be at an angle like this. You know, I mean, imagine 40 thousandths at the first, 56 thousandths at the last. If you don't see any fret buzz there, if you don't see some issue where you're going to have to really, you know, bow that neck into relief, and your bends are going to fret out early, it's just not right. This is not to say that somebody is super good at using 18th century tools such as a sanding beam and freehand eyeball guesswork files, that they work out things before they start sanding, and they make some compensations here and there so that it doesn't wind up this bad. You know, those are the good guys. But, you know, there aren't that many of them out there. Okay, so now you know what level is supposed to be, and you know that, you know, 6 thousandths of an inch, 5 thousandths of an inch makes a really big difference. And so you can see what's going to happen on this guitar if a sanding beam is used. So let's go look at like this here. We have a 5 thousandths discrepancy here. And that's going to be quite an angle on the beam. If we go here, all right, we have 4.5 thousandths on the low E side. And here in the middle, we got lucky. Call it dumb luck, because 47.5, 47.5, and all these 47s in here. So that's not actually bad. That's lucky, and chances are, you know, if you're good with the beam, and that wouldn't be a novice, by the way, you could get the middle level, right? But what good is that when your low E side and your high E side are all over the place? Coplanar, actually, and not level. So you get the idea. Now let's look at asymmetry. Asymmetry means that the frets are not following the radius of the fretboard. So when we look at the first fret, we have a 47, 52, and a 49. So we look at the smallest and the biggest, right? 52, 47. And what we get there is 5 thousandths of an inch on one fret. Over here we have 53.5 thousandths to 46 thousandths. So that is 7.5 thousandths. And then we have 56.5 thousandths to 46 thousandths. Wow. You know, that's 15 thousandths. That's huge. It's ridiculous, the asymmetry here. So this guitar, you know, and I know, talking to the customer, it wasn't playing very well at all. I mean, to make this work, a lot of relief in that neck, jury rigging the saddle, right? And, you know, probably some errors here in the nut slots. I mean, let me make something very clear. Frets first, nut slot second, saddle bridge third. And if you do everything right, you do not need to put relief in the neck. I'm telling you. The idea of putting relief in the neck is, well, you know, it's folklore popular. Yeah, but that's because they're using 18th, 19th century archaic eyeball guesswork tools. So I hope you can see the importance of the digital gauge and the fret forensics worksheet, so you get a real mapping of what you have. On this guitar, you know, it's a new guitar and the frets were still basically kind of all over the place. We had about, as I recall, 5 thousandths range from the first to some of these here, and then different ones in the middle. And the higher frets were down here, the lower frets were up here. And if you use something other than fret maestro, say for example a sanding beam, you watch all these videos and they say, oh, just mark the tops of the frets with a Sharpie and then sand, I'm not going to put the sandpaper on there, and sand until all the Sharpie marks are gone. Well, the problem with that is we have high frets here, low frets there. That sanding beam is going to be at an angle. And so if you just keep sanding until the Sharpie marks are gone, you'll have high frets here, and this last fret's going to be really low before it catches the ones in the middle. And so that's going to be a real mess. Sanding beams aren't easy to use. They are, you know, 18th, 19th century archaic tool that for some strange reason people today are still using in the 21st century. Those that really know how to use it, they know how to interpret the frets, and they'll make some adjustments so that they're, you know, not at some weird angle and going to cause a disaster. For the novice, no, that's a really bad idea. So, on the digital gauge fret adapter block, you're going to get more accurate reads than you are with this little brass block. For one, the radius matches. For two, you don't have to turn it around and look from the other side like you do with the brass block. And these are available on Reverb and Etsy. Now they come in a kit standard with a 9.5, a 12, and a 16-inch radius. However, Reverb makes it difficult to put options in the listing. So if you want different radiuses, just send me a message on Reverb. Tell me what you want, and I'll make sure you get those. If you have a radius that is different than any of the 11 we offer, let me know what that is, and I'll get back to you, and I'll make that for you. No problem with that, once you have the right stuff. And then each additional radius you can buy, you know, if you want more than 3. For most people, I think 3 is going to cover the bases, and 9.5, 12, and 16 covers your Fenders, covers your Gibsons, covers most of your acoustics. So it's a pretty good starter set. And but then again, like I say, if you want something different, just let me know. Whatever 3 radiuses you want, or 4 or 5. All right.